Any legend usually contains a grain of truth. The legend that attaches the old citadel of Bran to Prince Vlad the Impaler, also known as Dracula under the guise of a vampire count, is the exception that confirms the rule. They say that the prince spent a night at the castle a long time ago. There are no documents to prove this, but lovers of extraordinary tales do not seem to be bothered by such little detail. Just as it seems not to matter whether Prince Vlad the Impaler is one and the same with the unhappy vampire count imagined by the Irish writer Bram Stoker. Really, it does not, for the fantasy sounds wow. Both the novel and the films it inspired, some of them quite famous, made good money. After a century and a half of marketing, Dracula has become a two-bit bizarre merchandise. Here, in a frantic kitsch bustle, horror buffs are lured by the entire vampire paraphernalia, from crazy puppets and gory masks to icon and church articles, devilish horns, dishes with Vlad the Impaler's image, and whatnot. This happens only a few yards away from the beautiful castle of Bran. Naturally, the show does not amuse everybody, or is it taken seriously, but actors have a mighty fine time. Vlad the Impaler served as an inspiration to many writers, to mention only Victor Hugo. His fame as a strategist and fearless fighter, the way he mercilessly punished his enemies being often chronicled in the Middle Ages. He had become a legend before Bram Stoker made him famous as a secular vampire count owning a castle in Transylvania and wanting to buy nothing less than Britain. Through fiendish methods, naturally, well documented, the Irish author did not place his hero in the castle of Bran, but at Burgoley Pass, where Vlad the Impaler actually had a castle in a strategic point ideal for keeping a tight control on existing commercial roads. In a way, the Castle Hotel built here in 1976 is legitimately selling the legend of Dracula. In order to see walls painted with scenes from the life of the vampire, and the casket from which the monster emerges at times, you have to go down into a specially arranged crypt, at a cost, of course. Vlad, the future Impaler, was born in the 1430s as one of the three children of the prince called the Devil, son of Murcha the Old. This nickname came from the Order of the Dragon that had received from Sigmund Bathory in the citadel of Sigishwara. Very proud of the distinction, he exhibited it duly. In the idioms of the times, Slav or Latin, dragon was Drac or Draco, hence the devil, while Dracula or Draculea means the devil's offspring in Old Church Slavonic. Under whatever name, Vlad the Impaler was a fascinating character worth study. Some sources attest he was born in this house, inhabited by his father, whose face can be seen as preserved in a faded fresco. Vlad received a careful education, was then a prisoner with the Turks, and at 17 ruled briefly for 1 month. Only at 26 did he begin the reign that would make him famous as a righteous and valiant prince of his time. Also cruel, and most dreaded by the Turks and by thieves. He went down in history as Prince Vlad the Impaler. It was not Vlad who invented impaling, a quite common form of punishment through the ages, and especially at that epoch, Prince Stephen the Great and Holy had used it too, but Vlad improved the method and gave it subtler nuances. Thus, foreign enemies came to expire on stakes, but also Romanian thieves, burglars, or cunning and treacherous dishonest boyars. For instance, in 1457, at Târgoviște, the major royal residence of the time, Prince Vlad had several boyars impaled, whom he had found guilty of the death of his brother. That happened exactly 10 years after the horrendous deed. In the same year, the prince started works to enlarge and fortify the establishment, turning it into a solid citadel. The Tower of Kindia was erected as a watch point and fire tower. On peaceful days from here, the melodious sounds of the princely fanfare would delight the townspeople. Today, the Kindia Tower houses an interesting museum that also treasures the famous portrait of Vlad the Impaler. Not far from Târgoviște, in the Arges Gorges, the citadel of Poiana stands suspended at dizzying heights. Once there were only the ruins of a Teutonic city. The prince found the place adequate, a true eagle's nest, unattainable. Therefore, he had a fortified castle built there. Legend has it that it was erected in 7 days by the relatives of those impaled at Târgoviște. The only certain fact is that wounded in a heavy battle against the Turks, the prince withdrew here with his men. When after a 3-day siege the Turks reached the eagle's nest, they found it empty. Unfortunately, Vlad the Impaler had to deal not only with enemies outside his land, but also with the internecine wars and betrayals of merchants that made the rule equally in time of peace and war. Gory battles for the thrones of the Romanian lands stained the 15th century. History recounts about the outcome of the fight between Vlad and Dan the Young, crowned by the victory of the former and a raid to punish the Brasov and Saxon merchants. It was then that the beautiful Bartolomeu Church in Romanian style caught fire. The abode was remade later on. Several localities in the land of Bursa underwent the same lot. After establishing peace in his way, Vlad proposed a treaty to the people of Brasov, who in due time encroached it, of course. Each victory over his adversaries increased his fame as a cruel, merciless prince, and also hatred of the vanquished. The times were against this great champion of Christianity, and so were most of his followers, who became his traitors. He was left alone to fight the Turks and betrayed in the name of personal interests. In helping us to help yourselves, he said to Matthias Corvinus in the last letter he sent at the beginning of his final campaign against the Turks in February 1462. After 8 months and as many victories against the Turks, the Impaler eventually met Matthias Corvinus at Brasov, where he was trapped with the complicity of the boyars and imprisoned at Kungstein, whence he was taken to Visegrad. After 12 years he was released, and as a mere captain of the Hungarian king, he continued to fight the Turks. He was still needed. In 1476, he became again Prince of Wallachia for a short time, no more than a month that ended with his assassination. It was the last coup plotted by the local boyars in connivance with the Ottomans. The History Museum in the city of Bucharest houses the famous portrait of Vlad, alongside a document attesting to the existence of the city. The traits of his face are strong and reveal much bitterness and great loneliness. He must have been a tragic character, misunderstood by his epoch. History preserved his image of a valiant and terribly crude prince. His daring sheltered the country from the Turks, and his mercilessness cleansed it of its thieves. He was a great soldier and an accomplished strategist. All of his foundations had a military or a strategic rationale. In the Burg of Bucharest, on the ruins of the older fortifications, probably dating from his grandfather, Mircea the Old, he erected the princely court, turning the shabby hamlet into the most important citadel of the Romanian plain. The other two fortifications in the plain were the monasteries of Snagov and Comana, both strategically situated on the isles in the middle of a lake. The mind of the prince saw everything from the vantage of defense against the eternal enemy, the Turks. Comana represented an excellent vantage point to supervise the roads of Giurgiu, often visited by the Turks. Today, the foundations of this old citadel are revered historical ruins. The present monastery was erected in the 17th century by Steward Șerban Cantacuzino. While the Snagov monastery was constructed by Neoge Basarab. Only the fountain behind the altar, used during the sieges, and the belfry serving as a watchtower remain from the older foundation of Vlad the Impaler. The neighbouring population withdrew here at the times of danger, like to any fortified place. They say that Prince Vlad the Impaler was killed somewhere around here, and his royal bones are resting within the precincts too. As to Count Dracula, the literary character circulates its legend, not very rich, we have to admit, compared to its model, wherever appropriate.